Revealed. The sinister Kentucky family hiding 12 deformed children in a haunted, cursed home. Jane could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes boring into her as she stepped out onto the enormous porch of her new home. It was an old, dilapidated house, inherited from her estranged uncle, and tales of its cursed past whispered through the warm Kentucky breeze. These were stories that children murmured beneath their breath, imaginations running wild. But Jane felt something more, a visceral prickling on the back of her neck. She was here to escape, but could this house be her prison instead? Inside, the peeling wallpaper flaked off like the remnants of a bad dream. The floorboards creaked with every cautious step she took. Flickering lights overhead cast eerie shadows that danced across the walls, as if saying hello, or perhaps something more sinister. Was it her imagination? Or was the house's dark past reaching out to grip her? One day as Jane and Charlie ventured into town to grab groceries, the local children giggled nervously, sneaking glances in their direction. "There's the woman from the cursed house," one of them whispered. Jane brushed it off, too caught up in the warm atmosphere of Main Street, but the laughter echoed in her mind. She had heard about the tragic tale of 12 deformed siblings hidden away in her home, victims of a madness that consumed their parents. Surely, such legends were just stories, yet the shadows in the corners of her mind refused to let her dismiss them as each day wound on. The peculiar occurrences only escalated. One evening, while Charlie roamed the house exploring, he found himself irresistibly drawn to the attic. The sound of his small footsteps echoed despite the silence around him. Jane felt a sharp pang of worry as her son's odd behaviors worried her. He spent too much time staring into the darkness between the rafters, lost in something she couldn't see. The haunting whispers echoed in her mind, tugging her toward the unknown. That fateful night, after an unsettling day of eerie shadows and flickering lights, Jane found herself sitting on the porch, the sunset pouring a warm amber glow over the dilapidated building. But it wasn't warmth she felt. It was a creeping dread. Suddenly, Charlie emerged from the house, his innocent eyes wide. "Mom! There's something in the attic." In a haze of fear and disbelief, she followed him, her heart pounding, her instincts screaming at her to run. The trapdoor he had discovered creaked slowly as she pulled it open, revealing stairs that descended into an abyss of darkness, an unknown space she had never known existed. Goosebumps rippled over her skin. Grabbing Charlie's hand, she descended, flashlight in tow, heart racing. Each step felt like a leap into the unknown. The basement was a tomb of memories, walls lined with faded photographs of the cursed 12. Their twisted forms stared back at her, their eyes hollow and accusing. Panic clawed at her throat like a vice. As she turned, the door behind them slammed shut, trapping them in darkness. Whispers crawled along the walls while laughter echoed in the distance. She felt the presence of something watching. Suddenly, the echo of footsteps from above sent chills through her spine. A low chuckle resonated in the dimness. "You're just like them," it mocked. Jane clenched Charlie's hand, terror flooding her veins. As she looked up, the trapdoor creaked open, casting a sliver of light. Her breath caught. Who or what was coming down? "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The figure descending into the basement was shrouded in shadow. Jane's heart thundered, suffocating terror rising within her. Was this the sheriff who welcomed them, or something darker? Did the whispers belong to the past, or were they claiming their next victim? The weight of dread pressed in on her. 8 pairs of eyes, 12 solemn faces, all seemed to beckon her closer, and she could feel the darkness of Kentucky close in, pulling her family deeper into its haunted embrace. The shadowy figure loomed just above the steps, the faint beam of Jane's flashlight illuminating a slick, dark silhouette. She squinted, willing her eyes to pierce the gloom as her heart rapped against her ribs. "Who's there?" She tried to sound steady, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. "Just me." The voice was warped, a chilling echo that sent a shiver coursing through her. It wasn't he, the sheriff. Her exhaustion drained from her with each syllable. As the figure crept closer into the light, recognition struck. It was Charlie, not Charlie as she knew him, but something else entirely. His clothes were torn and covered in dust, face smeared, eyes wide but vacant. For a moment Jane's mind faltered. Little boy or monster? Charlie? The question fell from her lips, weak but charged with desperation. What had happened during his fascination with the attic? He didn't respond. Instead, he picked up a doll ripped and stained red and offered it to her, his small hand trembling. "They need us, Mommy," he breathed. "They want to play." The air turned frigid. A cacophony of whispers filled the basement, swirling around her, wrapping around her throat like a noose. Jane's blood ran cold. "What do you mean, Charlie?" She pulled her son to her, scanning the room for any sign of danger. A flicker of movement behind the wall caught her eye. Shapes shifted in the darkness. They were gathering, their twisted features barely visible but unmistakably watching. 12 silhouettes pressed close, their faces a ghastly array of sorrow and malice. "Help us," they murmured in unison, a chorus of tormented souls. Jane's breath hitched. "What do you want?" She shouted at the shadows, her voice echoing in the confined space. Panic surged. Was this a nightmare she wouldn't wake from? "It's not what they want, it's what you will become." The shadowed figure spoke again, its voice wrapping around her like cold fog. "You're just like them. You will fit right in." Charlie jerked from her grasp, stepping closer to the figures. "I want to play," he whispered, his eyes now gleaming unearthly in the dim light. "No." Jane lunged forward, her heart racing, grabbing his arm and pulling him back to her. "You don't want to do this." The shadows hissed, a low and menacing sound that vibrated through the air. Eyes like black holes bore into her soul. In that moment Jane understood, truly understood. The cursed history of this house was not just some distant tale. It was alive, hungry, waiting. She stumbled backward, dragging Charlie with her, breathless and frantic. "Get back. Stay away from him." But as she turned, the shadows inched closer, their shapes morphing into grotesque forms that echoed her son's laughter. A door crashed open above them, suddenly flooding the basement with light. A figure stepped down, silhouetted against the brightness, big, heavy-set, a stern expression that instantly turned to shock. "What are you doing down here?" The figure didn't have time to move. The whispers from the walls erupted into screams. The darkness surged forward, all at once dragging both Jane and Charlie into the chaos. The trapdoor slammed shut, cutting the light off as shrieks enveloped them. Time stretched and warped as Jane fought the tide of horror pressing in. "Charlie, hold on to me." But Charlie had already vanished into the mass of shapes, his voice swallowed by their clamorous cries. In the suffocating dark, Jane screamed for her son, clawing against the unseen terror, but the voices became a fortress of sound, a prison of malevolence. "Mommy," her name was a faint whisper amidst the chaos, teasing the edge of her consciousness. The darkness tightened its grip. She would either escape or share the fate of the 12 that lingered forever. How could she fight something that knew her very soul? With rage fueling her, Jane braced herself for a fight. But who was she truly fighting against? Would she uncover the truth before it was too late? Would the shadows rise to claim another? The whispers grew louder. "You're just like them, you're just like them." As the world blurred, she felt herself slipping into the void. What awaited at the end of the shadowy corridor? Questions swarmed in her mind, darkening thoughts threatening to engulf her. What was the cost of escape? And then she heard a final voice among the chaos. "Charlie. Help me, Mommy." The frantic call ignited a spark of determination within her. With every ounce of strength she mustered, she would break free. But would she be too late to save her son? Jane felt the cold darkness closing in, its grasp tightening around her. It whispered secrets only half formed, snaking through her mind, filling her with dread. She couldn't lose her focus, not now. Her instincts screamed for her to push through the stifling air, to claw her way out of this nightmare. "Charlie!" she screamed, the name a desperate prayer as she staggered deeper into the mass of shadows, each movement bringing her face to face with the hollow-eyed figures. They reached for her, fingers elongated and twisted, a cacophony of threadbare cries enticing her to join their spectral ranks. For every step forward, Jane felt the weight of a dozen souls pulling her back, their voices shedding light on the grim truth. "Join us, be one of us," they sang, the sound grating against her ears like nails on a chalkboard. Was this her destined fate, another lost soul in the backdrop of tragedy? "No," she shouted, digging her heels into the floor, the dim light from the trapdoor now just a painful memory. She thought of Charlie, of his bright smile and innocent laughter. "I won't let this happen." But the shadows surged forward, more insistent now. Charlie's voice reverberated through the darkness, drawing her closer. "Mommy, please." A flicker of hope ignited within her. She lunged forward, past the grotesque dreamlike figures, determined to find her son. They whispered words she could not comprehend, words like poison that threatened to seep into her veins. But she pushed on, driven by love as Jane fought through the gloom. She could feel the temperature drop, each breath becoming a cloud of mist in front of her. The shadows danced, warping into indistinct shapes that threatened to engulf her. For a brief moment, her resolve wavered, and she caught herself thinking, what if her son had already succumbed? What if the shadows were right, and she was destined to join them? "Charlie," she cried out again, fear tipping into anger. "Where are you?" A sudden rush came from her left. Jane spun, heart racing. It was a figure, not a shadow but solid flesh. Exhausted and battered, it was Charlie, his wide eyes filled with an unfathomable depth of terror. "Mommy, help!" His voice was haunted, weighted with the experiences of horrors she couldn't yet grasp. She reached out to him, their fingers brushing, but he was yanked back into the swirling dark. "No!" Jane lunged forward, grasping the edge of her reality, a tiny shred of her fading strength burning bright. "I'm coming for you!" The shadows hissed, anger radiating like a violent wind, scattering around the basement. They recoiled as she called on her deepest love, her maternal instinct overwhelming their presence. In the flash of that bright emotion, Jane glimpsed something stirring in the shadows, something worse than despair aface. "Awaken!" it roared, a voice that carried centuries of malice and fury. The figures shifted, alighting into a terrible dance of writhing limbs, forming a grotesque tableau. Mommy Charlie's voice, once again, crackled through the surrounding chaos. His image flickered in and out of focus, like an old film reel sputtering to life. "Stop!" she screamed, her heart pounding furiously in her chest. "Let him go!" The figures mingled, their voices blending into an unsettling lullaby that echoed through the basement. "You'll be ours soon, just like the others." A realization coursed through Jane. The shadows weren't evil. They were trapped, and perhaps so was Charlie. She felt the truth sinking in. Protecting her son required more than sheer will. She would have to uncover the story lurking within this cursed home. The figures seemed to pause, their whispers turning into curious murmurs. Reading her fear, with uncertainty, Jane steadied herself, glancing at the maze of darkness around her. "I'll bring you peace, I swear," she proclaimed, feeling the weight of their despair wash over her. Just then, she saw the faint outline of a door, shrouded in darkness. It flickered like a dying ember. Could there be a way out? A path to freedom? "Charlie." She lunged toward the door, a path that promised escape or damnation. But as Jane reached for the handle, an icy grip wrapped around her wrist, pulling her back. The figures erupted in screams of anger. "Don't leave." She shivered, caught between two worlds, the dark and the light. Time was slipping. Would she uncover the truth woven deep in the darkness before it consumed them both? A scream echoed through the stillness, chilling her bones. It wasn't from her or Charlie. It was something worse, or maybe someone else lost in this eternal darkness. As panic clawed at her heart, Jane knew she had to act fast before the shadows took everything from her. Would she break free, or would she be lost to the abyss entirely? The door loomed ahead, its outline flickering like a candle in the wind. Just beyond it lay her potential salvation. Jane's heart raced in tandem with the cries that echoed through the darkness, a sickening chorus of lost souls pleading for release, their elongated fingers still grasping, reaching. With every ounce of strength, she fought the icy grip around her wrist as her mind focused solely on her son. "Charlie, I'm coming," she yelled, every syllable laced with desperate resolve. As she yanked her arm free, she staggered forward, propelled by something more potent than fear, the undying love for her child. The shadows wailed, their cries filling the air with dread, but she silenced them in her mind, using the vision of Charlie's face to power through. But just as her fingers grazed the doorknob, the world warped. The door shifted and twisted, its shape undulating like boiling water. She hesitated, confusion nesting inside her. The whispers grew louder, weaving together a chilling narrative. "You must know your son's fate is tethered to ours." Their words slithered into her brain, reluctant thoughts emerging from the mists. What if Charlie wasn't just lost? What if he was entwined in the very fabric of their torment? A sudden flash of light tore through the darkness, splintering it apart for just a heartbeat. In that moment, Jane saw the room shift. The basement turned into something eerily familiar, a living room, worn but bright, filled with toys and laughter. She glimpsed a happy scene, one of childhood joy before all turned dark. But it was an illusion, a deceitful window, filled with the laughter of ghosts. "No!" Jane screamed, wrenching herself back to reality. The shadows didn't care about her memories. They were hungry for despair, eager to consume her. "I won't let you take him." The door pulsed with an unsettling rhythm, as if mirroring her heartbeat. Jane lunged for it again. As she pressed down on the handle, freezing wind lashed against her, like banshees running at her back, demanding, pleading, unforgiving. "Damn it!" she shouted, tearing at the energies pulling her. "What do you want?" The shadows calmed, a low murmur rising and falling like a distant echo. They encircled her, forming a tempest of swirling darkness. "To be free," responded a voice that reverberated from every corner. "But you must face it first. Only truth can liberate." "What truth?" She spat back, terror curling in her stomach. "Find us. You must find the others who came before with children like him. They were sacrificed and you hold the key." "Sacrificed?" The word sent a kinetic shock through her, a realization that settled like ice within. It wasn't just Charlie lost in this darkness. It was an entire lineage, a history she had yet to unveil. The moment of clarity shattered abruptly, and she was yanked from her thoughts as the shadows lunged again. How long could she fight this? With the door still before her, she mustered every ounce of courage left. "Show me." But as she shouted those words, a deeper void engulfed her thoughts, whispering the chilling truth. What if unraveling the mystery meant losing her son forever? Suddenly, a haunting figure emerged, a woman cloaked in shadows, face obscured. Yet Jane could feel the presence radiating ages of sorrow. "You must go deeper, Jane. The answer lies beneath." Beneath? Her pulse quickened. What did that mean? Was there more to this house? A darkness buried beneath the ground? Before Jane could ask, the shadows howled in despair again, the swirling mass of figures coalescing into a lurching, monstrous shape. "They know," it seemed to lock eyes with her, the depth of its void more profound than she had ever imagined. "Do you dare?" It hissed, voice thick with malice. "To seek what is buried? Or will you surrender?" Fingers trembled as she gripped the doorknob tighter, haunted by what lay behind it and what awaited her. Time was running out. The world spun, suffocating her in an eerie silence. Jane faced the howling shadows, knowing she stood at a precipice, caught between love and fear, truth and sacrifice. Would she dare unearth the secrets of this cursed place, or would it swallow her whole? In an instant, her decision was made. She would fight for Charlie's freedom, not just through the shadows, but through the cursed history locked beneath her feet. Taking a deep breath, She turned the knob. The door swung open, revealing a darkness deeper than she had ever imagined. A cold breeze whipped past her, as if 1,000 lost souls beckoned her forward once again. With heart racing, Jane stepped into the unknown and vanished. What awaited her in that inky abyss? Would she find the key to save her son, or would it become her eternal tomb? The darkness enveloped her, curling around Jane like a suffocating blanket. Every breath felt like inhaling smoke, thick, acrid, and stinging her lungs. The air was loaded with despair, echoing the screams of forgotten children. She stumbled forward, disoriented, fighting against the unseen forces dragging her down into a deeper pit of dread. "Charlie," she called, but her voice was swallowed by the weight of the abyss. Panic crested within her, and the thought of the shadow's whispers clawed at her already frayed nerves. She pressed onward, uncertain of what awaited. Familiar shapes began to materialize in the dense darkness, twisting branches and broken toys scattered across the ground. It felt wrong. She was in an echo of the life she'd lost. Fear surged through her again, recalling the moment she had last seen Charlie, the sheer terror that laced his innocent face. "Mommy?" A voice echoed back, wavering and hollow, almost childlike. Jane froze, her heart hammering in her chest. "Mommy, where are you?" "Charlie?" She spun around, eyes wide, straining to see through the enveloping void. "I'm here. Just hold on." The voice faded, replaced by the laughter of the shadows, a cruel mockery that sent chills racing down her spine. She had to move, had to find him. Determined, she pressed forward, her instincts sharper than fear. And suddenly, the ground beneath her feet shifted. The darkness shifted too, pulsating like a living thing. It warbled and breathed, as though responding to her very presence. Ghostly figures began to emerge from the edges of her vision. Faces pale, features contorted in silent agony. They reached toward her, not as enemies but as mournful souls seeking release. "Help us," they murmured in a soft chant, laced with desperation. "Get away from me," she screamed, stumbling backward. She wasn't here to help. She was here for Charlie. The realization was a punch in her gut. She was not just navigating a supernatural prison. She was stepping into a horrific legacy, woven with pain and sorrow. Every child lost, could they all be like Charlie? A crumbling wall loomed ahead, splattered with dark stains resembling fresh blood. Graham crackers and crushed candies littered the floor, remnants of a shattered birthday party, a chilling reminder of innocence lost. She stepped closer, heartbeat echoing in her ears, her thoughts racing with dread. A soft voice crept in, again chanting, almost like a lullaby. He is waiting, stop it." Jane shouted into the darkness, but the shadows only recited their lines more fervently. A tide of memories erupted, swirling around her, visions of children laughing, then screaming. They were alive once, and then as she turned away, a memory crystallized in her mind, snatched from the shadows. A newspaper clipping flashed before her eyes. Mysterious disappearances. 6 children vanish in the night. The horror of the headline hit her like a brick. "They were taken," she whispered in disbelief. "Taken by this place." "Oh," but not all. A voice slithered from the dark, silky and smooth. The shadows coalesced, forming a sinuous figure that slunk closer, eyes gleaming with malice. "Some choose to stay, you see. They find comfort in our darkness." "Lies." Jane's stomach churned with a nauseating mix of fear and rage. "I will find my son." Time blurred as she pushed away the phantom, her mind racing against the specter's siren calls. She sprinted down a narrow corridor, each step louder than the last, echoing against an unseen wall. And then she froze. A door, looming like a great monolith, appeared at the end. No flickering shadows danced here, only a deafening silence. The murmurs faded. All that remained was the faint outline of hope. "Charlie," she yelled, anxiety tightening around her throat. With trembling hands, she gripped the doorknob, hesitating just a moment. Was this another trap? Would the abyss consume her if she chose wrong? Before she could second-guess herself, She turned the knob and flung the door open, heart racing, desperate for the truth, desperate for her son. What lay in that room beyond? Was it salvation or a greater doom? The whispers of an unknown past coiled tighter around her, a promise of horror yet to come. The door creaked open, revealing a dim room drenched in shadows. An overwhelming sense of dread dripped from the walls, festering like a wound that refused to heal. Jane squinted, straining her eyes to penetrate the darkness within. There was a faint glimmer of light in the far corner, flickering like a trapped firefly, urging her to step inside. "Charlie," she called softly, her voice shaking as it echoed back at her, like the memory of a wind that no longer existed. Every instinct screamed for her to turn back, but the desperate hope of seeing her son pushed her onward as she stepped through the threshold. The door shut with a bone-chilling thud behind her. She spun around, but the door had vanished, replaced by a smooth wall of blackness that seemed to breathe, pulsing with ominous life. Panic clawed at her throat. She was trapped. "Mommy!" The cry came again, piercing through the veil of silence. It was so close, so real. Her heart leapt, but with it came a visceral pang of terror. This place was alive, and the walls smelled of sorrow, thick and heavy. She moved toward the flickering light, her footsteps muted by an unseen force that seemed to suck the sound from the air. Each step was weighed down by heavy expectation, as if the very ground was unworthy of her presence. Approaching the light, Jane's breath quickened. The light spilled from a small lantern perched on a cracked table, illuminating an array of toys, teddy bears, dolls, each one distorted and twisted as if sculpted from nightmares. Laughter echoed softly. Was it a memory or something more sinister? "Charlie," she whispered, trembling as the memories washed over her. The laughter turned more chaotic, morphing into shrill cries, intertwining with the size of the shadowy figures lurking at the edges of her vision. They watched, yearning and hungry. Then she saw them. Huddled in the corner were figures, children, twisted and deformed. Their eyes were wide and darting, glazed with unfathomable sorrow. Whispering voices swept through the room like smoke, weaving tales of despair and longing. "Help us," one child pleaded, hands reaching out, but their words froze Jane's heart. She stumbled back, horrified. This wasn't just a dream, it was a nightmare made flesh. "No!" she screamed, the sound escaping her in a desperate gasp. "Not you too. Charlie is lost. I have to find him." The deformed children fell silent, their eyes turning to her with such haunting despair that she could feel the weight of their collective sadness. It hung thick in the air, stifling her breath. "You can't help him," they chorused, their voices echoing in haunting unison. "He belongs to the darkness now." Jane staggered backward, her mind racing. "No, no, Charlie is still here. I know it." The cries erupted anew, filling her with a bone-deep terror as the shadows began to swirl and thicken around her, reaching, grasping, suffocating. She could feel them clawing at her sanity, each trailing whisper beckoning her to join their ranks. "No!" she shouted again, a surge of defiance coursing through her. But as she turned, a figure lurked behind her, its shape barely discernible, but its eyes glowed like fiery embers, watching. "Would you sacrifice yourself to save your boy?" it hissed, voice like molten silk. "Or will you abandon him like all the others?" Jane's pulse quickened, her heart torn by the weight of those words. Was joining Charlie truly an escape or merely another branching of the abyss? "I choose him," she declared, steeling herself against the overwhelming dread. With newfound resolve, she turned back toward the lantern, the children's cries rising to a tumultuous chorus. "Charlie, where are you?" she begged, feeling the fabric of reality shifting. As she shouted, the shadows pulsed, rippling as the lantern flickered wildly, threatening to extinguish, and then, across the room, a door appeared, solid and inviting amidst the chaos. "This way," someone whispered, urging her forward. Jane stepped toward it, her mind racing, unsure of what lay beyond. Could salvation be just a door away, or would it lead her deeper into despair? As she reached for the handle, darkness trembled around her, as if the very air knew the answer and held its breath. As Jane's fingers brushed the door handle, a shock of cold rushed through her body, paralyzing her momentarily. The whispers surged around her again, growing louder, more frantic, drowning out her thoughts. "You must decide," they chanted. "The darkness demands a price." She steeled herself, gripping the knob and pulling. The door creaked open, revealing a long, arched corridor draped in shadow. Painful memories flooded back Charlie's South laughter in the park, his voice calling for her. But that warmth was swallowed by the chill of the corridor, where walls adorned with tattered family portraits gazed down upon her with despairing eyes. "Mommy, help me!" The urgency in Charlie's voice propelled her forward, adrenaline flooding her senses. She sprinted down the corridor, the air growing colder with each step. The laughter morphed again, transforming into screams that echoed hauntingly, rattling her resolve. Not much time, a childish voice wailed behind her, begging for release. Suddenly, the corridor twisted before her, illuminating several doorways lining each side. She skidded to a halt, feverishly scanning the doors. Was one of them the way to Charlie? Panic boiled in her gut as she felt the shadows clawing at her back, but she had to act quickly. The door to her left bore a faint glow, a tender light that flickered like hope. But the door to her right shuddered, pulsating with an ominous energy that drew her in, despite the gut-wrenching instincts warning her to flee. "Mommy!" Charlie's voice broke through the confusion like a lifeline, pulling her closer to the glowing door. "Hang on. I'm coming." Desperation laced her words. She bolted toward the light, but the shadows resisted, scraping against her legs, their cold tendrils snaking up to pull her back. With every step, Jane felt like she was running through molasses, a weight pressing down upon her. The walls closing in, a twisted chuckle floated from the dark door, sending shivers through her spine. "Come play with us," Jane it cooed, mockingly sweet. She could feel the presence behind her thickening, the very air screaming against her, urging her backward. "No, I want tea." She fought through the darkness, pushing forward with every ounce of strength she had left. The glow from the left door seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat, offering a glimmer of hope that she could almost reach. Jane hurled herself through the glowing door, expecting a world of warmth and safety on the other side. Instead, she stumbled into a cavernous room, where the air was stagnant and the smell of decay wrapped around her like a heavy fog. Her heart sank as she glanced around. Strung up like grotesque marionettes were the children, limbs impossibly twisted, their faces etched with horror. They couldn't be real, this had to be another nightmare. But their eyes, they were alive, full of agony, each staring directly at her. And for a moment, time stopped. "Help us," they echoed, their voices dripping with despair. "No." She slammed her eyes shut, staggering back, clutching her head. She couldn't bear this, couldn't lose herself here. Not when she was so close to finding Charlie. Gritting her teeth against the pain, she forced herself to open her eyes. Then she heard it, a faint cry, softer than the rest, barely a whisper. "Mommy, Charlie." Desperation flared once more, drowning out the cries of the others. She scanned the room, searching frantically. Where was he? Did he suffer like these children? Her heart raced, pounding in her ears as she turned toward an arched door at the far end, darker than the abyss behind her. It seemed to beckon her, promising answers or doom. Was the door ahead truly a path to Charlie? Or was something waiting for her in the shadows, preparing to trap her in this nightmare forever? An icy surge of terror coursed through her. With her heart hammering, she stepped forward, bracing herself for whatever lay beyond. This was the moment of truth. As she lunged toward the door, an unholy laugh echoed behind her, chilling her to the bone. Nothing is what it seems, what awaited her beyond the threshold. The door loomed ahead, dark and foreboding. Jane swallowed hard, her throat dry as dust. The muffled cries behind her faded, replaced by the relentless thud of her heart against her chest. With a trembling hand, she grasped the cold knob and twisted it. Pushing the door open, it creaked like a dying animal, revealing a dimly lit room that felt devoid of color, a sepulchre of despair. The air was thick, cloying with the scent of mold and something far more pungent: fear. Every corner seemed to twitch with panic, shadows creeping toward her, as if longing for her warmth in the bitter coolness that filled the space. "Charlie," she called, her voice wavering. "Mommy." The sound was haunting, warped by the distance yet unmistakably familiar. Her breath hitched. There was no time to waste. She scanned the room, desperate to locate her child amidst the haunted silence and the lingering wails of the others. The walls were lined with what looked like crumbling wallpaper, faded and peeling, revealing grotesque murals that twisted into terrifying figures, people locked in pain, their eyes hollow and pleading. Jane recoiled, instinct screaming at her to run, to turn back. Yet still, she pushed deeper into the room, her back prickling with the sensation of unseen eyes watching her. "Stay with me," she whispered, almost to herself, as she fully stepped inside. The shadows thickened, swirling with whispers that became a cacophony. "You chose wrong, there's no escape." Each word buzzed in her head, a poison that coiled tightly around her thoughts. She stumbled, her foot catching on something soft, and she looked down to see a child's small shoe, abandoned and dirt-streaked. Her heart sank further. "Mommy!" Charlie pleaded again, much closer now. She bolted toward the sound, nearly tripping over the gruesome remnants of what could only be the past: legs, arms, faces, all lost to darkness. "Charlie!" She found herself at the far wall. There stood a large, cracked mirror, its surface a darkened lake reflecting the shadowy forms of children pressing against it, except they weren't just reflections. They reached through, desperate fingers splayed wide as they grasped for freedom. "Help us!" the children cried, their eyes filled with terror. This was not right. This was wrong. Jane felt bile rise in her throat, and the whispers grew louder, swirling around her until she could think of nothing but escape. She stumbled back, trying to shield her eyes. The reflection of her own face twisted and morphed until it took on a ghastly grin, revealing jagged teeth. "Join us!" It resounded, a sinister symphony of echoes. "You must give in." "No!" she screamed, both in defiance and desperation. The image diminished, leaving nothing more than a wretched fog that coiled back into the gloom of the room. The children pressed harder against the mirror, their silhouettes fading, leaving her utterly alone in the oppressive stillness. Frantic now, she whirled around again, glimpsing a narrow passageway beside the mirror. There has to be another way out, she reasoned with herself, hope clashing against despair. The cries had died, replaced with a heavy silence that felt suffocating. Just as she was about to retreat, the ground beneath her trembled, and a low rumble sounded. The walls shook as grime rained down, and the murmur of voices returned. Not just whispers, but the rumbling of laughter, mad and unhinged. "It's too late," they taunted. "You're already ours." Jane realized the walls were closing in, the corridor narrowing, each step she took becoming more desperate. She had to move before whatever nightmare this place held fully consumed her. But as she burst into the passageway, she heard it again, a guttural snicker filled with malicious glee. "Don't forget. You can't escape your past." Would she find Charlie in the depths, or was this descent merely leading her into deeper torment? With determination fueling her fear, Jane pressed forward into the unknown, heart racing, praying she wasn't too late. The passage swallowed her, a narrow throat of darkness that seemed to stretch on forever. Jane felt each heartbeat thrum in her ears, dread pooling in the pit of her stomach. She moved forward, propelled by desperation, each footfall a defiance against the entity lurking behind her. The echoes of the laughs twisted and tangentially curled around her, wrapping her in a soft, sinister embrace. The passage was damp, the walls slick with something that could only be described as viscous. She pressed against the cold stones, trying to keep her balance as a low, guttural growl vibrated through the air, filling the narrow confines with an urgency that sent shivers racing along her spine. Just ahead, a flicker of light caught her eye, glowing like a dying ember at the end of the passage. Heart hammering, she rushed toward it. Charlie's voice wove through the shadows, a tether of hope but also a haunting melody of despair. "Mommy, hurry!" He sounded so close, yet the darkness clung to her like a shroud, pulling her back. As she reached the end of the passage, A wooden door stood ajar, inviting yet foreboding. The light seeped through the crack, pulsating softly. She pushed it open, her breath freezing in her throat as she stepped inside. The room before her was larger, a vast cavern-like space illuminated by flickering candles, their flames dancing erratically as if entranced. But the enchanting glow did little to soothe her. Instead, it revealed the grotesque horror that filled the room. Faces twisted, deformed, forever frozen in anguish were etched into the walls, their mouths stretched wide as if trapped in a scream. "Mommy!" Charlie cried again, desperation lacing his voice. "Charlie!" She darted into the room, frantic. She needed to find him, to pull him from whatever hell had invaded this place. But the air thickened, tasting of sulfur, each inhalation a challenge as it seemed to weigh her down. Shadows slithered along the ground, whispering her name, urging her to join them, to abandon hope before her. At the center of the room stood a young girl barefoot, with tattered clothing that hung loosely off her tiny frame. Her hair hung like heavy curtains, obscuring her face. Jane's heart raced. Are you one of them?" she dared to ask, stepping closer. The girl lifted her head, revealing eyes that shimmered with the reflection of countless candles. Eyes that seemed to hold the weight of the world. "You can't save him," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper, yet it locked Jane in place. "We all belong to them who—" Jane choked out, panic clawing at her throat. "They—" The girl gestured weakly towards the flickering shadows. "You have to leave before they see you." Suddenly, the shadows surged forward, coiling at the corners of the room, hungry and impatient. Jane's breath caught. She couldn't just leave Charlie. She felt the pull of the shadows, their taunting whispers urging her, seducing her with promises of release. "Mommy! Help!" The cry pierced through her thoughts. Charlie's voice echoed from another corner of the room, and Jane's heart plummeted. She turned, mind screaming for escape, but the shadows thickened, wrapping around her legs like tendrils of night, holding her back as she struggled. "Come play with us," they cooed, lacing silk-like threads of dread through the air. With recoiling horror, Jane faced the girl again. "How do I save him?" A flicker of understanding crossed the girl's face. "You must face the darkness, but it will demand a sacrifice." Jane's mind raced. Sacrifice? What would that entail? Shadows moved closer, groping at her, as if sensing her hesitation. "I can't lose him. I want tea." "No choice," the girl whispered, fear drifting from her in palpable waves. "Yes, waiting." Just as the shadows lunged, Jane felt a burning light flash through her, the flames of the candles igniting with a furious intensity. For a moment she believed she could fight, but the darkness around her pulsed, drawing tighter. "Time is running out. What is your choice?" Jane steeled her resolve, knowing the answer was hidden in her heart. She felt Charlie's presence, his warmth even within the chaos. "Not again," she whispered, ready to tear apart the shadows that threatened to engulf her. But what would she have to give? As she took a step forward, the very fabric of the room seemed to shudder in anticipation. Would the sacrifice she considered cost her everything? The shadows roared, an angry crescendo that echoed through the cavern, reverberating against the walls as the candles flickered once more. And then, silence fell. "What will you choose?" echoed the empty sound of the room. Jane stood at the precipice of her darkest fears, aware now, more than ever, that her greatest nightmare was still waiting to be revealed. What price would she pay to reclaim her child? Jane took a shaky breath, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. The flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows around the room, each silhouette a reminder of what was at stake. Charlie's voice, desperate and begging, echoed in her mind. "I won't abandon you. I can't." The shadows pulsated and tightened, feeling her resolve waver as if they were feeding off her fear. "Please," she whispered, shoulders squared against the grip of darkness. "Let me save him." The young girl watched, her hollow eyes filled with a sadness that mirrored Jane's own. There was no turning back now. With every ounce of courage she could muster, Jane stepped forward, bracing herself against the suffocating darkness. "I will face whatever cost is needed," Just give me back my son. The shadows shrieked in laughter, a cacophony of anguished voices rolling through the space. Silly woman, what will you sacrifice? A figure emerged from the murk, elongated hands stretching toward her, fingers like gnarled tree roots. It was a face twisted in sorrow, an amalgamation of all the tortured souls Jane had seen. You will know true suffering. The air shimmered around her as Jane forced the memory of Charlie into her mind, the way he smiled, the way his laughter wrapped around her like a warm embrace. No, I will not allow you to take him. With a fury ignited by love, she felt a sudden rush of warmth flowing within her, lighting the darkness momentarily. In that very instant, the girl took a step back. You are far stronger than you realize, Jane. They fear you. Jane's resolve solidified. I choose love. Energy jolted through her body, illuminating the shadows that had long feasted on despair. The figures hissed, recoiling as Jane lifted her gaze. I want to become just another story. You think you can consume me like the others? You don't know me. She could feel the power surging at her fingertips, radiating outward, shimmering like the sun breaking through storm clouds. The shadows lashed out but could not penetrate her newfound strength. Charlie, she cried, her voice booming in the confinement. The floor trembled as the shadowy figures writhed, harmony and cacophony clashing in a dissonant storm. Mommy! Charlie's voice rang out, urgent and close. In that moment, something shifted within the room. Jane felt the boy's warm spirit entwining with her own, amplifying her strength even further. With a primal scream, she thrust her arms forward, passing through the dark that had wrapped around her heart. Light erupted like an explosion. The shadows screamed, beastly cries of anguish and rage engulfing the room. No, you cannot. But Jane stood firm. This darkness will be gone. You don't own me. You don't own my son. The boundaries crumbled, and the light expanded, devouring the shadows. Suddenly, Charlie appeared in the center of the light, his small form shimmering like an ethereal beacon. Mommy! He cried, joy flooding into his voice as he rushed towards her. Jane lunged forward, arms outstretched, and they collided in an embrace that kindled warmth in her frigid soul. I'm here, baby, she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks as her grip tightened around him. I'll never let go. The shadows howled in fury, yet their swift retreat dispersed like smoke on the wind. Jane felt Charlie's small heartbeat sinking with hers, an anchor tethering her to hope. As they continued to embrace, the darkness evaporated, the room morphing into a familiar space, their living room, sunlight flooding through the windows that had been closed for far too long. She pulled back from him, scanning his face for any sign of harm. Are you okay? Charlie grinned, the innocence of childhood returning to his eyes. I'm okay, Mommy. I'm so happy. As Jane embraced him once more, a profound ache lessened within her heart. They had cracked the shroud of despair that haunted their home. Yet, even in the warmth, a gentle breeze whispered through the room. The memories of those lost souls hovered just at the edge of her consciousness, a silent reminder of pain intertwined with love. We did it, Charlie. We stopped them. With a sudden clarity, Jane understood the power of their journey. Not just to escape the darkness, but to bring light to those still trapped within. We need to help them too, she said softly, the weight of her promise to those lingering souls heavy upon her shoulders. As they stood together, Jane knew their story had just begun. They would find a way to honor the memories of the lost, to share their love and light so that they would never be forgotten again. And with that, Jane took a deep breath, strength renewed, hand in hand with her son, ready to face the thrilling adventure ahead. Now, before you leave, I have to tell you something super important. If you want to keep diving into more amazing stories like this one, you need to subscribe right now. This is the moment to show your support and help unleash these tales for everyone to enjoy. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm seriously. It makes a difference. And I want to hear every single thought you have. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You're part of this adventure too. Let us spread the word and keep the storytelling alive.